Hello and good afternoon. It's actually afternoon here, about maybe 3:30, almost 4 o'clock. And from the title of the video, you can see what it is. I will start by saying this by far is the most unnecessary tech purchase I've probably ever made. Fortunately, it's not the most expensive one I've ever made, so that's saying something. But if you've been following any of my previous videos, you already know that I own a 16-inch MacBook Pro. And from other videos that I've made, essentially, what I've said is the experience you get with Apple products almost unilaterally is the same. You can get a phone, or you can get a tablet, which is just a bigger phone. You can get a MacBook, which is now is a computer, but has the same chips that were derived from the phones. Or you can get a Mac desktop, which is just a stationary version of said laptops. And today, before you watch the video, consider subscribing. We are on our way to 1 million subscribers. But before we get there, we got to get to 1,000. And before we get there, we got to get to 400. Got the hiccups. I apologize. So please consider subscribing, comment, like, do whatever. I decided, well, really 2 days ago, I decided that I wanted to give the M1 Mac Studio a try. Now, in the past, I've owned an M1 MacBook Air, an M1 MacBook Pro, an M1 Mac Mini, an M1 Pro 14-inch MacBook Pro, and also a M1 Pro 16-inch MacBook Pro. The only M1 product that I have not purchased, which I don't think I will at this point, is the iMac, the M1 iMac. Yeah, I had no desire to ever own that thing, and I don't think I ever will. This right here, which, yeah, it's a pretty hefty box, is something that's always interested me. I will say that, as I mentioned, I did own an M1 Mac Mini, and what turned me off about the Mac Mini was I got the base model, which was fine for most stuff that I was doing, but when I started video editing, I did see a little bit of lag, and now that, hindsight is 2020, some of the issues probably were not necessarily the machine itself, but some of the peripherals that I had. So once Apple released this guy, I said, that's interesting. I mean, yeah, it's a bit much, but that's interesting. And I did not buy this brand new. None of the products I bought were brand new. I did once bought the M1 MacBook Air new, and I returned it because I just wasn't feeling it at the time. But everything since that initial purchase, everything else has been used. So I did buy this from Apple through their refurbished store, and I'd like to say the refurbished price was fine. And then I looked on eBay and I saw something that was a little lower. But then I also realized, or at least remembered, that you can combine their military discount with the refurbished price and get an additional 10 or so % off that. So at that point, this technically I think was only $6 more than the cheapest buy it now Mac Studio that I was seeing on eBay. And I said, well, I'll get it in 2 days as opposed to however long it would take for somebody to ship it out. So without further ado, let's go ahead and unbox this thing. Online, it said that it was 11 pounds. On the sticker that was on the box said that it was 12 pounds. So yeah, I will say this is a hefty boy right here. But in typical Apple fashion, it looks, pretty nice. You have the little pull tab right here. So I'm gonna pull that when I put it down. And I don't know if it's wrapped in bubble wrap or if it comes in the original Mac Studio box. So let's find out. And I can already tell you, it's in the Mac Studio box. I can see the handle right here. Let me see if I can back up. And plenty of people have done their own unboxing and stuff, and I guess I could. All right. So yeah, I pulled the tab off already. Now let's go ahead and open it. All right. So there we go. That's one hefty computer right there. Pretty compact though. So I'll set that aside. I don't know how much, I don't know how much they spend on R&D when it comes to boxes. Sometimes it seems like maybe the price of the item would be a little cheaper if you didn't care so much about the packaging. Now, as we can see, they do have, I guess, their little pull tab right there. So we'll go ahead and pull that. And that comes down. I mean, yeah, it's nice. Really, it's really nice packaging. And I'm just like, is all this necessary? And let me turn it around this way. So here's the actual machine. It tells you there's two little arrows right here. So you go ahead and pull those aside and pull this little guy out. All right, and they do have it nicely wrapped in their typical, paper and stuff like this. And whenever I buy these things, if they're coming, either new, which isn't often, or from another seller, I do my best to try to still open these things as delicately as possible. I mean, some people just rip them off, but you never know. Maybe I'll end up reselling this too, and I like my buyers to also have a similar unboxing experience, even if it is a used item. So let me put that down right there. And yeah, I even try to wrap this back up kind of nicely somehow. It's a little different from all the other ones. There we go. And like that. Yep. Okay, I'm just going to drop that in there. And I know there's been a lot of talk about their power cables and stuff, and this one, I guess this is considered braided. And yeah, I know people have been unboxing these things for over a year now. Heck, the second iteration of the Mac Studio is now out, so I'm super late, but hey, first time for me, so I am enjoying it. So let me take my time with this. Now, anytime I do sell a Mac product and I attempt to wrap the power cables back up in the way that they were when I got it, it never works. Yeah, absolutely, it never works. All right. There we got everything in the box right there. That's right there. And you have, the paperwork up here too. Stuff designed by Apple. There's probably some stickers in there. Whatever. Boom. All right. Now, as you may notice, which I'm sure you do, I'm not where I normally am when I record my videos. It's hot up there right now, so I have the AC cranking. And the microphone on this probably would catch everything compared to when I'm recording on my MacBook Pro. You have the SD card reader on the front, two USB-C ports. They are not Thunderbolt. I think they're USB 3.2. I'm going to say 10 gigabit per second transfer rates. Along the back, you have 4 Thunderbolt ports, 10 gig Ethernet, power port, 2 USB-A ports. I'm going to assume they're USB 2.0, but I honestly don't know. HDMI 2.0, maybe, I don't know. Combination headphone jack. And I think there is, I know there is a speaker in here, but of course we can't see it since it's internal. Other than that, that's about it. Power button and power LED on the front. As they say, it's about 2.5 Mac Minis stacked on top of each other. So that'll be that. I would like to talk to you for a few more minutes before I actually boot it up because, as I mentioned, it's pretty hot upstairs. What drove me to get this, and I know, I just kind of ramble from time to time. I mean, dating back to 2020, that's really when my mind started noticing fan noise. I, at the time, had a laptop that I purchased maybe 4 years prior, and, we started working from home, and, the fan noise would just get to me. I mean, I'd be sitting there doing nothing, and the fans would just rile up. Or I'd be on a Zoom call or something, and the fans would be going. You do anything, and I'd say, why are these fans always on? So I think my next machine after that, I got a cheap little Celeron something. And in fact, no, that's not true. The Celeron came later. What I did is I got a Dell Optiplex Micro, so a real small, super small form factor desktop, and I wanted an i3 because I knew it was super low powered, so therefore it shouldn't generate that much heat, so therefore the fan shouldn't come on that often. And since I was using it only for work, I figured that would be perfect. And it was. That thing was great. And I used it for, the next year and a half or so. And I did eventually sell it, so hopefully the new owner is enjoying it as much as I did. But as time went on, I started using more laptops, and some of the laptops were okay. And, of course, we're talking about Macs. They were all pretty quiet now with the introduction of M1. But a lot of my PC laptops, the fan noise still would be somewhat problematic. And right now, I have a Dell Precision 3470, a Dell Precision 5470, and a Lenovo ThinkPad T14. And I'll tell you, with both of those Dells, one being an i7 and one being an i9, there are times when the fan noise is just unbelievable. I mean, it's not always, because, sometimes the fans really just don't appear to be spinning, you don't hear anything. But because there are such powerful machines in such a small chassis, heat, I guess, physics, you can only do so much in terms of heat dissipation. And with that 54.7, which is the i9, I actually have gone into the BIOS and I've turned off a few of those cores because I was hoping that by doing that, it would reduce the amount of heat that was generated. And so far, I think it has worked. But then that means I'm now crippling the performance of that machine. About a year ago, I made a video about that 3470, which is the i7, and that thing is a monster. I mean, they both are. But one thing that I noticed almost immediately when I purchased that one is how poor it's constructed, really. It's capable of accepting Gen 4 PCIe Gen 4 SSDs, but when I bought one and installed it, that drive ran so hot that it was uncomfortable to use the machine as a laptop. To type and do everything on it, it was just uncomfortable to the touch. So I ended up removing the Gen 4 drive, returning the Gen 4 drive and installing a Gen 3 drive, and that's been fine. But I will say the fan noise is still a huge problem. So fast forward, through all the M1 series of everything, and I'm like, oh man, it's great to have a MacBook Air that doesn't even have a fan. It's great to have these powerful 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros that do have fans, but are barely audible, and that's only when the machine is truly under load. I think the only time that I actually heard my 14-inch MacBook Pro really ramp up the fans was I was attempting to render maybe an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes of video just in iMovie. So it was going. And honestly, I think I might have had it. I don't know if I was on my desk or if I was on my bed. If I was on my bed, clearly airflow was a problem. But either way, I think that's the only real time that I really heard the fans ramp up. Now, a year or so after the Mac Studio has been released, the one thing that I constantly hear is, one, how powerful it is, but two, how almost impossibly inaudible it is. And that's really what I'm looking for. The fact that I can really get some work done on this, whether it's video editing, some type of virtualization, or something else, and knowing that it'll be whisper quiet. That will be great. So I'm hopeful of that. Now, as I'm sitting here and you're like, again, if you got to this point and you're waiting for the boot up, Mac, they're all the same. So if you've seen somebody set up a Mac, you've seen everybody set up one. So that'll come maybe later in this video or in another video. But I will say that I think there are two more points that I want to make. The first point is the fact that I did have, as I mentioned, a Mac Mini. And what turned me off about that is the fact that at the time I was using the Mac Mini and then I was also using a Windows laptop. And I did not have a dock the way that I have a dock now. So when I was switching from one machine to the other, there was a lot of unplugging and plugging going on because I needed all of my peripherals for the Mac Mini, of course. And since I'm sitting at a desk, I'd like to use the monitor, the keyboard, and the mouse for the laptop as well. So I'm constantly having to swap things out all the time. And that became a pretty big problem. And I eventually was just turned off by it. So I sold the Mac Mini And I think me selling Mac Mini was really one of the reasons I stopped editing video, because I said, well, I don't have anything. And then eventually I got, the MacBook Air and was doing some light editing on that. And then the Pros came and so forth and so forth. So hopefully, since I have a dock now, if I do need to constantly swap back and forth between my Windows PC and this guy, it won't be as problematic because I should just only have to swap out one cable. I will say I know that KVMs do exist, and I've considered purchasing one of those. Sabrent and Anker both have some. I know both of them have some really new ones, and I'm pretty sure Sabrent has an older one that might also be suitable. So that is definitely one thing that I'm looking forward to hopefully experiencing, just a seamless experience between Windows and Mac OS on my desk. The other thing, which I am kind of concerned about, which we'll see, and I guess really 3 points I need to make. This is, maybe point one, part A, is that on the back, I know that if I'm using that dock, I can connect that USB-C cable to one of these 4 Thunderbolts, Thunderbolt 4 or 3, I'm not sure, one of these Thunderbolt ports, and I'll get everything that I need. So that is cool. But as with the Mac Mini, when the I/O is on the back, it's kind of annoying to have to constantly reach around to unplug it and then reach back around again later on when you want to plug it back in. So I'm hopeful that even though these aren't Thunderbolt ports, I can actually do everything through through 2 ports. That would be great. If I can get video out over these ports, that would be great. So I know data in will work, but will video out work? I don't know. And that's something that we'll test. It would not surprise me if Apple said, no, if you want to do all that additional stuff, you got to use the back ports. The front ports are for USB drives, maybe some, and whatever other things you need to plug in, but you're not going to, it would not surprise me if they are not full service ports. Okay. And the last thing I want to say, because as I bought this, and it was, about six or so, maybe about $600 or so off of what the retail price is. It got me thinking about, I guess, the state of Apple's, professional grade devices. So, of course, you have your Airs, which they're over there. Then you also have your 13-inch Pro, which hopefully they stop making it. But then you have your 14 and 16-inch Pro, and those come with the M1 or M2 Pro and the M1 or M2 Max. Okay. But then when this was released, you say, okay, if I want a desktop professional grade device or professional level device, I get this guy. Or, again, at the time, the Mac Pro was, existed, but that was way more expensive. So you get this guy, and for the same price as the base model 14-inch MacBook Pro, you now have a desktop, but instead of getting the M1 Pro chip with 16 gigs of RAM, you get the M1 Max chip with 32 gigs of RAM. Okay, nice little trade-off. They both come with 512 gigs of storage, so that's the same. But for that same amount of money, you trade off, you get a little more RAM, and you get 10 gig Ethernet right there. You get more ports. You get the chip with additional GPU cores, but you don't get a screen, you don't get a keyboard, you don't get a mouse, and it's not portable. So before I bought this, that was definitely one of the trade-offs that I was attempting to make of, well, do I want something like this, or do I want that 16-inch MacBook Pro? So I went with the 16-inch MacBook Pro originally, and now I have this. So we'll see how it works. But the point that I was trying to get at when I said all that is, I wonder, and it's Apple pricing, they're really smart at what they do. Why didn't they make this at the time with an M1 Pro chip in it? Why do you have to get the Max and then of course the Ultra if that's what you really want? Why did they not put the Pro in this little guy? Now, fast forward some time later, they come out with the Mac Mini with the M2 Pro, and I think somebody realized that. All right, well, as a prosumer, or even a professional, whatever, you might want a little more power from a desktop, but you don't want to spend this much money. So it would have been kind of cool, in my opinion, if they had an M1 Pro Mac Studio, and then you knock off, $200-300 or so, that would have been kind of cool. But I think that's enough rambling for now. like I said, I'll set it up and I will make another video about this. But so far, I mean, there's really not much to see from the outside. But yeah, it's as described. It's a chunky boy, and I am excited to start using it. So thank you very much for watching, and you have a good rest of your day.